Good afternoon, YouTube's man, always George Page, aka the Emperor of Female Combat Sports Talk, coming to you live on YouTube. Well, folks, it's been a while since I did anything on combat sports, especially when it comes down to the women. As you know, most of my goal and focus on is female bodybuilding, but I'm still a fan of it. Always want to shout out to the people who really got me into this, into the world of combat sports, mixed martial arts for women. Shout out to my man, the coach. Can't forget my brothers, Exeguchi 23, No Filter MMA BJ over there, Combo Wicker 99, and my sister Tay Brown, and also guys like MMA Addict, who I'm a fan of. So I was on social media, just morning, going through, just flashing through, seeing things going on. Then I saw this that Holly Holm has announced that she's retiring from fighting. As you know, Holly Holm has been in the game for quite a long time. She's been fighting for pretty much over 30, over 20 years, nearly 30, might as well say. She's fought several disciplines from boxing to Muay Thai to kickboxing, MMA. I mean, she's one of the top women in the fight game. She's even a Hall of Famer. She got inducted in 2022 in the Boxing Hall of Fame. But as you know, most of the time, most of us might remember her mostly in UFC for a little over 10 years. And also her move to back to boxing is recently. As you know, that's where she really was, her bread and butter was boxing. She fought people like Mia St. John and Christy Martin during her career and several other top five fighters in her game. She did pretty good, probably a good record, with only maybe a couple losses here and there, and mostly a lot of wins, held in several titles. She mostly fought out of her own backyard, Albuquerque, but I often felt like when she fought there, she got an unfair advantage sometimes. I mean, some fights I've seen her in, I think she should have won, but, politics or whatever else. But then one of the fights that really was, I think, a shocker, when she fought against Sophie Mathis. This is like almost, can't believe, like at least 15 years ago. And it was a whooping. I saw this fight. Used to show it, you can catch it on on YouTube, or sometimes some networks show it. And this referee, he's incompetent. He saw this woman wrapped up in the ropes. He could have stopped the fight, but let her kept on going. That made no sense. Her corner should have thrown the towel in. And her corner was mostly, I think, was her father, her friends, and whoever else. They didn't. I mean, you got to save a fighter. If a good corner to save a fighter from themselves. She kept on fighting for a good bit, but later on she made this jump to MMA. MMA was starting to pick up, especially for the women. Dana White eventually added women's MMA to the UFC. And she fought a couple of fights in some organizations, even fought in Bellator at one time. One of her fights was this knockout of a lady. Wow. I remember her sister, she was thick. But that knockout really got the attention of Dana White in the UFC. And she eventually joined the UFC. And she was with the Jackson Winklejohn gym, Jackson Wink. The gym, I feel like my man, the coach, he felt like this gym really held her back. He didn't really train her good enough. Because some things, I feel like, she was a decent fighter, but still, I think she wasn't as evolved. But then in the UFC, she climbed up, fought people like Raquel Pennington, Renault, and then she had a shot for the title against the then champion, Ronda Rousey. And this is one thing, she shocked the world, defeating Ronda Rousey, knocking her out with a famous head kick. I mean, it was a shocker, laid her out. And one thing about Ronda Rousey herself was not a complete fighter. One thing was she relied too much of her judo and, her takedown and her arm bar. Never really had great stand-up. That was the problem with Ronda Rousey. She was not a complete fighter. Then she became the new women's 135 champion. 135 at the time was the only division for a long time in UFC, till later on to get strawweight. And then she lost the title to Miesha Tate, who was one of Ronda's biggest rivals. She was winning the fight in the first rounds, but then one thing where I said again, Holly was never really a complete fighter because she did not have a great ground game. That's how he took her out. She took out with a rear naked choke, and that was over. Then Miesha Tate became a new title. So she lost the title to Amanda Nunes. Then she fought against Valentina Shevchenko, who was undersized. Valentina was fighting girls bigger than her in 135, where she could have been, she knows she's a strawweight. She's not the flyweight champion, but she beat someone like Holly Holm, who was probably bigger and taller than her. That was her best win in her career, beating somebody like a former champion like Holly Holm. And then, they opened up the 145 division, and this was a shot for her to get a new title. She faced against Jermaine, the Iron Maiden, Jeremy. Jermaine also announced her retirement a while back. And, this was a really severe loss. Some say that Jermaine was fighting a little dirty. You could have said that too that way. And as we call it, go duck and run. After she won the title, she decided that she wanted to fight Chris Cyborg. And then she kind of had a bounce back, which she beat, I think, a fight I used to like with a fan of Bet Correa, knocking her out in a fight. And that was a big comeback for her. I think it was the time for her to come back up again. And then she had a shot again for the 140 title against Chris Cyborg. That was a battle. It was tough. I mean, as you know, Chris was the 145 champion at the time, and it was really one of her toughest fights. She was getting manhandled. She was getting mollywopped. She threw some good punches there and there, but Chris is just a tough fighter. She's just strong. Other than the fight against when she lost against Amanda Nunes, Chris really has often dominated her opponents. And her family still took her to the corner. Now she was at the time married, but then a situation happened that her and her husband got divorced. That was around about 2019. And I think feel like he as any man, he wanted to settle down, have a family, because they've been together for like little over 5 years. But he just wanted to move on his own life and maybe have something more. And Holly's a fighter, she's an athlete, so she stuck in it. Then she got a shot for the title once again, 135 against Amanda Nunes after she beat it, Megan Anderson. And that fight, it ended not too great for Holly. With Amanda used the same famous head kick that's Holly Holm's signature, and she was out. That I was disappointed. I know she was disappointed to lose that fight, and she climbed back up again. She had a couple of wins. She was supposed to fight. She fought Raquel Pennington. I think it was the second. It was the second fight for them because they fought back. A little about several years ago. Then she beat Irene Daniel, who was one time a title contender. And then she was against Caitlin Vieira, who herself was a title contender, and she lost to Vieira. It was probably not a good point for her to lose. She was climbing back up again. She beat somebody. She beat Yana Santos. But then the most controversial fight in her career was a fight against Marina Brianna Silva, where she lost, but the fight was considered no contest because Brianna Silva was found out for being doping. She was taking drugs. Then she had a fight against, the new title women's 135 champion, Kayla Harrison, and that was another dominant lose. I mean, that was a whooping. So what's Holly's future now? Well, she at one point she was re-signed for 6 more fights, and I think she had 2 left. So she decided just to go ahead and to retire, from the UFC. And I think it was understandable because you think about it. At this point, she was in her early 40s, and she's fighting women who are, let's say early 20s, late 20s, early 30s, and being a fighter for that long time, it can be tough on you. So she decided to come back to boxing. So she fought an opponent a while back. Her name was Yolanda Vega, and this was like this past summer. And she beat Vega by decision. It was too a close fight. It was a unanimous decision. And Holly, she's pretty good. This was her first boxing win in almost, let's say, 15 years. Since she switched over from boxing to MMA. And she still had it. That's one of her favorite things was the flip after her wins. And her camp is still with her, like her father and her brother's there. But she has a new group because now she's not with Winkle John much anymore because she's doing boxing. And then she even got into some wrestling. And one thing is, it's kind of late in life to do this now, wrestling. She's in her mid 40s, and you're wrestling against girls who are probably a lot younger, a lot stronger. She and I think it would have been better if she'd done it maybe 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, before she got in the UFC, because wrestling is probably one of the fundamentals of MMA. That's what she needed, because that's how Miesha Tate beat her, because Miesha Tate's a better wrestler. As you know, just last weekend, she just fought as a part of the co-main event of the Amanda Serrano Talos fight, which was in Puerto Rico. And her opponent was Stephanie Hahn. Stephanie is the current women's lightweight champion in her division. And, I think it feel like, you got to say it again, Holly is up there. She is in her mid 40s, fighting against opponents maybe 10 to 15 years younger than her, even 20 years younger than her. And the fight was going back and forth a bit. I think Holly has her good points, but I think Han was doing a little better. What didn't happen was a clash of heads. It was an accidental clash, and it hit a nasty knot, and it was bleeding specifically on Han's forehead. Well, it wasn't too much in the way of her eyes or anything, but the doctor stopped it, So the title went, so Han retained her title as the lightweight champion at 138. And it was a loss for Holly Holm. This was her first boxing loss in maybe in nearly 15 years. And I just saw that she said she decided to retire. You know, and there's talks about maybe her fight someone like Katie Taylor or some other fighters. But now I think she realized that you got to take a step back. Life's more important than just keep fighting. She has a great look to her. Like I said, again, I'm not a big fan of her, but as a guy, I think she's an attractive woman. She has a look to her. She can model. She can do this, especially for women who are much older. Um, she can work as a commentator, like working fights or even working for organizations like maybe, as ESPN no longer has the UFC. UFC has moved over to Paramount Plus. Dana White can probably hire her, and as a commentator, especially, or other promotions. And her background, being a fighter, being a boxer, it can use someone like her. And also, like I said again, she can be a coach and a trainer. Working with up and coming competitors, and especially being a woman over 40, amazing shape, great condition. I mean, she could work and train other people too, make a living from it. You got to think about Holly Holm, former boxing, MMA champ, Hall of Famer. That's something you can put on you can own be your own gym. Like I said, her personal life is, it's kind of sketchy. She was married before, and there was always rumors about her and John Jones because they both worked and trained at the Winkle John gym together. Never no confirmed about it, but John does like his snow bunnies. And like I said, Holly's not that bad of a looking woman. She has a decent looking face, and again, she has an amazing body. So, riding off to the sunset for Holly Holm. Her future is bright. Like I said again, she's still in great shape. She still have our faculties. Like some fighters, some fighters have issues, mental and like stuff like that. Even though she might have those issues too, but not as bad compared to some others. I mean, like I said, she never took a lot of heavy damage in her career, other than the fight with Sophie Mathis and the knockout from Amanda Nunes in the fight against Chris Cyborg. Pretty much she has maintained a good level of mental stability. She also works with her brother. They own I think they're partners of a distillery. They do like I think vodka or is it tequila, one of those things. So I think her future is bright. Whatever she does, being a coach, be a trainer, working commentary for fighting, companies, or news company, ESPN, maybe somebody hire her, Fox Sports, somebody. I think she can work that. She has a future. She's, like I said again, and then one thing is she doesn't have responsibility of family. She don't have kids to worry about or a man. But you know what? There might be a man in the future. You never know. Like I said, she's still a decent looking woman. She's in good shape. I'm not saying she'll have babies or ever, but she has a life. So to Holly Holmes, I would say I respect your game. Congratulations. Move on with your life. Like I said, the fight game, leave it to the younger competitors who want it. But you, like I said again, you can always come back, work as a trainer and a coach, and maybe work some corners. People would love to see that too. So best of wishes to Holly Holm and her new future out of fighting. So this is your man always George Page, aka the Emperor of Female Combat Sports Talk. Don't like, subscribe. I'm out.